Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. The only game this weekend between two teams ranked in the AP poll originated in Inglewood, California. Final score, number 22, UCLA 65, number 14, Gonzaga 62. Mick Cronin's Bruins led by as many as 11 points, won by 3 after Ryan Nembhard decided to launch from beyond half court with nearly 4 seconds remaining. Tyus Edney would never. Norlander, fun game between two West Coast powers that have given us fun games before. I think you'd agree with this. Ryan Nembhard, great college point guard, had a wonderful 39 minutes and 50 seconds against UCLA, but the final 10 seconds were rough. Missed a free throw with 8 seconds left that would have tied the score. Then after a pair of Sky Clark free throws that push UCLA's lead up to 3, Nembhard launched from beyond half court again with plenty of time to spare. Unsurprisingly, the shot missed, and that's how things ended. To his credit, Nembhard did own the mistake afterwards. Still, I think all of us watching from home were like, what are you doing at the moment he let it fly?
Yeah, no doubt. Interesting the way the game ended. Because Nembhard, he had the beautifully designed play by Mark Few to set up Nembhard to get the bucket, which led to a foul, and UCLA wasn't as prepared as they needed to be. And so he goes to the line, and then the great Jason Benetti was on the play-by-play. And then, everyone gets bitten by the announcer jinx every so often. Benetti said something to the lines of, he's built for this moment, because he had recalled during COVID, him and his brother had gotten into a fight at their house. His brother, who is obviously a former Gonzaga player himself and now in the NBA, and they had covered up one of the holes in the wall so the parents wouldn't see it. These are not 11 and 13-year-olds, by the way, when this happened. So it was a great little anecdote. Benetti sets it up to say Ryan Nembhard is made for these moments, and then he alligator armed it. It was a lemon booty situation, unfortunately, totally the whole way. And then nevertheless, they do get one last chance down 3. And he launched that puppy from, I want to say 60 feet and I was checking, I think it was 3.6, 3.5 to go on the clock. It wasn't full on Roscoe Smith. Shouts to the great Roscoe Smith who did this for UConn against Texas all those years ago. Surely, I think the funniest shot I've ever seen in college basketball. It wasn't that, but man, was it early. Now, here's what Nembhard said after. He said, quote, I just knew they were going to foul when I threw it to Ben, meaning Ben Gregg. They were about to foul him, and then he threw it back. I thought that was the best shot I could get off. I probably had a couple more dribbles, but I knew they were going to come foul, end quote. While that would have probably happened, if you watch the flow of the play, by the time that Nembhard actually uncoiled the shot, there was not a UCLA defender within reach of getting him. I think Clark might have been the closest one. Plenty of time left on the clock. If that's going to be your plan, as you well know, GP, just about every single team I've ever seen do a Division I practice, they either start or end the practice by everyone taking half-court shots. And depending on what they do, no one's allowed to leave until at least one is made. Sometimes they wait for however they do it. Every Division I player with semi-regularity, albeit not in a game situation, has the capability to make a half-court shot. I bring that up to say I think Nembhard could have afforded another minimum 2 dribbles to get to the half-court line, which still probably doesn't go in. But if you're releasing it at, say, 1.9, 1.8 at the half-court line, it would have been better. Regardless, UCLA gets the win. I want to dive into the game just a little bit. And I know you want to dig into Gonzaga's resume, but I will just say this. Just love the fact that we continue to get this kind of game. And hopefully, I actually think UCLA winning might have been critical to having this be a semi-regular kind of game moving forward. UCLA's got an arrangement with Arizona. I don't know if it can or will or wants to, if these schools want to play every single season, given that they are not conference affiliates. But I'd like to get it if we could. Once every other season, every third season at least. Obviously, they've had some huge moments in the tournament, GP, but UCLA had not beaten Gonzaga since 2015. And I think for Mick Cronin to get this win, get a close win, these teams can't help but play close games. This is an awesome West Coast rivalry that has real impact nationally, GP. And so to get another close game, really the only With respect to the other games we're going to talk about, there was only one game on Saturday in college basketball that mattered on a national level that was going to draw on a casual audience there on a day filled with 3 NFL games, a number of bowl games. And this was the one on a big network in the middle of the afternoon. So I love that we got it. UCLA is now 3-7 all time against Gonzaga, by the way. Your thoughts on the game, on Gonzaga, wherever you want to take it. I'll give some love to UCLA more in a little bit here, but I want to toss it back to you on your takeaways of what we saw on that one.
Well, just to circle back to Nembhard, I like that he owned it afterward. Like it wasn't like, he said he explained it perfectly. This was my mindset. This is what I thought they were going to do. This is what I was trying to do. But yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, I probably messed that up. What else you want me to say? I like it when people raise their hand and say that's on me. And I try to teach my kids to do that. I try to do that when I think I need to, and so I can appreciate him doing that. The problem with the mindset, though, is, okay, they're going to foul you. And even Mick Cronin after the game said, yes, we were going to foul up 3. If they want to go make a layup, we'll let them make a layup. But, if we think they're going to try to launch a 3, we're going to try to prevent them from taking it. The problem with assuming they're going to foul you and the other coach even confirming, yes, that's exactly what we're going to do, is it doesn't take into account teams screw this up all the time. Like just because they want to foul you doesn't mean that they will. Just because their intent is to foul before you shoot doesn't mean that they will. Teams screw this up all the time. Teams practice it all the time. Then they get on the court, they screw it up all the time. Most famously, obviously, 2008 national title game, Chalmers for the tie. So, yeah, you're right. They do practice these types of shots literally every time they're in the gym. But I mean, that was well beyond half court.
It was early. It was weirdly early. Nembhard had a really nice game. And then, by the way, I didn't give the scenario. There were 8 seconds to go and he could have tied it with the foul shot. So we missed that one. And then they get the other opportunity there. And it was an odd, you don't normally see a game end with a player of such huge consequence that's been good for so long, have 2 head scratchers, oddities that wind up going that way. And that's the way that UCLA wound up getting the win.
Yeah. So I'd rather, like, if your worst fear in that moment, if you're Nembhard, and this is all happening very quickly, right? Like I've had hours to think about it. He had seconds. Yes. So it's easier from my perspective. but
we're getting into the very dynamic of sports commentary and real differences between playing the game and talking about the game. Yes.
It's much easier to talk about it the next day than it is to do it in real time. I acknowledge that. If your biggest fear is they're going to send me to the line in a foul up 3 situation where I'm going to have to make the first. And, oh, by the way, I just missed one, but I'll have to make the first and then intentionally miss the second probably. And then try to get an offensive rebound and then try to stick it back. And that's how we get to, like, that's a lot, right? That's the whole premise behind foul up 3. It puts the other team in a situation where a lot of things got to go right for them to push it to overtime. As opposed to just a 3-point shot made at the buzzer. Still, I'd rather have that, as unlikely as it might be, than the shot that Nembhard took, right? So even I'd rather him get fouled and go to the line than shoot from where he shot. Take a few more dribbles, I can live with something, I think. But from there, it was too early and too deep. Either way, fun game. UCLA needed to bounce back after, they really let one get away from them at the Garden. We talked about this with Jordan on HQ yesterday before tip-off. We were both at MSG last Saturday, and I mean, we were sitting each other the whole game, and like it was like North Carolina was in bad situation the whole game. It looked like UCLA was going to win it the whole game, probably by double digits, and it just flipped. And that can be a turning point in the season. I don't want to suggest that I thought it would be, but like, seasons can go the wrong way, and often it's, it always has to start somewhere. And for them to bounce back and get a, important victory, quad 1 victory over, another prominent West Coast program, big national brand, after what happened in the CBS Sports Classic the week prior, I thought that was good stuff for Mick and that program. And like I've said and written previously, it looks like their transition to their new league is going to go a little more smoothly than some other schools' transition is going to go.
Yeah, no, credit to UCLA. They get up by 11 in the first half. They wind up hanging on. But how about this? They shot 12 of 24 from 3 in the game, so 50%. That wound up being crucial because they were just 8 of 31 from inside the arc. That's just 26%. Rare occurrence there that a team would shoot almost twice as good or as well from beyond the arc as it did inside of it. And for, I don't know how often that happens, or I know it doesn't happen often, for whether we've had one instance or 20 instances in the past 2, 5, 10 years, however long, I would wonder if a team would be more likely or less likely to lose, given that's what UCLA did and was able to narrowly win this game here. Also, the number 1 turnover team in the country. Cronin's done a really good job. I actually think this team, and I mentioned this, I think, on an HQ hit a couple weeks back. I do think in some respects this UCLA team has a composition to it that resembles some of his good Cincinnati teams. And by being the number 1 turnover rate team in the country, that exhibited itself again here against Gonzaga, induced 9 steals, 15 total turnovers. UCLA had its share as well. I think, in fact, UCLA only won the turnover battle by 1. But nevertheless, they needed to turn Gonzaga over. Were able to do that. Credit to Eric Daly. He got 18 points. I actually thought it was an important thing that it wasn't necessarily Bilodeau again being the guy that had to show up in this game and be the absolute dude stud alpha. It wasn't necessarily the case. Daly's got some real gumption to his game as well there. So good on Cronin. I do think that this team enters 2025 as I think it's as reasonable a pick to win the Big Ten as pretty much any team in that league right now, which is not to say I think UCLA will do it, but I'm highly confident. I'm going to stick on my preseason projection here, Parrish. I'm highly confident UCLA will be a top 4 team in the Big Ten. I think I had them 3rd going into the season. If not, I had 4th at the absolute worst. So I still think that's going to be the case. But what is intriguing is you get a game like this, good game, close game, awesome. Love to get it on a bonus Saturday here on a relatively slow weekend of college hoops. But outside of what we saw in the game and how we saw UCLA kind of continue to dictate with its offense, which I thought was a very important result here. Not that they just won. They won. They hold Gonzaga, good offensive team, to 62 points. You're seeing a lot of good indications from Cronin's team that, okay, this group is so different from the Bruins team last year. That's key. They have taken on kind of his personality and most of his best teams, not all of them. He's had a couple of that have zagged on what he likes to do, but most of his best teams have kind of reflected who he is and the style he wants to play. That's good. However, what's intriguing is Bruins are 11-2. They have 3 top 100 wins to this point. Not awful, but not as many as you'd like from a resume perspective. Now they are all good. Well, at least 2 of the 3 are good. At Oregon, high quality, going to be a quad 1 win no matter what. Gonzaga in LA, going to be a quad 1 win no matter what. And then they beat Arizona and Phoenix. If Arizona can get its act together and get better, that win will age gracefully there. So a really good record from a resume standpoint. Here come the opportunities one after another in Big Ten play. The Big Ten's not the SEC, but there's a lot of stuff going on there overall. So that's good for UCLA, but the record doesn't necessarily reflect the strength of the team's NCAA tournament projection, but I do think it reflects how good the team is overall. Gonzaga, however, GP, they're 3-4 on neutral courts this season. Now, some of those neutral courts are closer to home than otherwise, so it's not like outright neutral. But if they haven't played in a true home environment or a true road environment this year, Gonzaga 3-4. That'll be a ding on the resume when we get to Selection Sunday, wherever they wind up being. They're not going to play any other neutral court games until they get, obviously, to the West Coast Conference Tournament, where they'll have a fine chance of getting that number above 500 there. But the resume is just, it's okay right now. And frankly, go back to when we talked to start the season. Remember that, GP? Gonzaga destroyed Baylor. We were like, well, here we are again with Gonzaga. It turns out that was something of an outlier. I still think they're going to get in with plenty of ease, and the WCC has improved this season, so they're going to have actually more Q1 and Q2 opportunities because Washington State and Oregon State are in. Actually, the league itself is going to help Gonzaga's resume stuff. But what are your thoughts on where the Bulldogs are now that they've wrapped up all of their meaningful non-conference games?
I think they're going to end up being a team that is going to have strong computer numbers and a lot of wins. And then you're going to look at the resume and go, but there's not much here, and they're not going to be seated appropriately.
That's what's going to happen. So you're projecting right now. You think that Gonzaga, whatever seed it gets,
it will not correlate with their, say, KenPom ranking, because they're not going to have the wins to back it up.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably
on Selection Sunday. We are going to gather around midnight. I'll be in a hotel room. You'll be wherever you are, and we'll say at some point, whoo. Gonzaga got a 6 seed or a 5 seed, but they're 7th at KenPom. That's where we're going to be. It's going to be something like that, because right now 2-4 in quadrant one. They are 2-0 in quadrant two, but just 4-4 in the first two quadrants. 4 of their wins so far are quadrant 4 wins. Best win is either Baylor on a neutral or at San Diego State. And the at San Diego State thing doesn't look as good today as it looked,
No, but we'll still be, barring a surprise, it will still be a quad 1 win, but I hear you.
Yeah. So, and then there's only 3 more quadrant 1 wins on the schedule based on current projections. Nobody else in the WCC is even in the top 50 of the net right now. So this is probably going to be a good team with a lot of wins and great computer numbers, but the substance in the body of work is going to be lacking, and that might cost them from a seed perspective. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It'll be interesting as we move along in the season. We get closer to that to see where Gonzaga is trending toward from a seed perspective, and if we think they're a better team or not. Maybe how we view them as a team will correspond and correlate exactly with where they're seated. It'll be interesting to see. Your Q1 notes are interesting. I would think they have a minimum of 1 once they get to the WCC tournament, of course. And then I think the quad 2 games that are going to be, they're just going to have more of them this year, because the WCC across the board right now as we head into 25 is better than it has been, kind of top to bottom. And I think that can benefit Gonzaga. That said, got to get the work done. You got to continue to get those wins. We'll see. And it's also got to be, if you watch the game against UCLA, I think the very obvious thing that I started to take notice of at the under 16 or so of the second half, I was like, all right, EK is doing what I thought he'd do. I thought he would show up and play well, and he did. He had 24 and 8. Nembhard, last 15 seconds aside, 16 points, 8 assists. Okay. No one else on the team had more than 6 points. Now, credit to UCLA. That was a great game plan, pretty well executed overall, but you're going to have, it can't be that. It can't come in. It can't grow into that. It can't grow into 4 out of 5 games. It's 2 guys that are overwhelmingly responsible for what we're doing. I know Few and his staff don't want that whatsoever. And so I think that they will continue to grow as an offensive unit and not just have those 2 guys be the primary 2 guys, because Gonzaga at its best is going to have to rely on other guys. And you're going to have to see more out of Hickman. We've been saying this for years, but you're going to need more of that. But I do think there is a chance, to your point, that when we get to March with Gonzaga, it's where it is placed in the bracket, you will be tempted. This is just a projection, I guess. I think a lot of people will be tempted to pick Gonzaga to outperform its seed based on how it lines up because of what it failed to do in the non-conference. Whether it does it or not, we'll see. Obviously, this team has made 9 straight Sweet 16s, the 3rd longest streak in the history of the sport. So don't doubt Mark Few when we get to March. But it is for the 2nd straight season. It is, and it has become an interesting regular season for this program. Last year, they needed the win against Kentucky in February to kind of jumpstart their NCAA case. They don't have that game this year. As I mentioned on the previous show, they don't necessarily need it. But we don't have a Gonzaga team as we flip the calendar again for a 2nd straight season. We don't have a team that we're looking at and saying, oh, yeah, that's a top 10 team. And you and I both thought that was clearly the case. I would say you and I both thought that was clearly the case as recently as 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Now we reassess. The team's got plenty of work to do.
Yeah, I've got Gonzaga all the way down to 21 in the top 25 and 1 now. UCLA up to 11. And you mentioned that the Bruins only have 3 top 100 wins, and we'll move on after this. But all 3 do qualify right now as quadrant 1 victories. And only Auburn, Oregon, and UConn currently have more quadrant 1 victories. Now, a lot of people have 3, but only 3 schools have more than 3. And right now it's Auburn, Oregon, and UConn. We'll touch on a few other notable results from Saturday next, but first, feels overdue. Let's get a word from our partners.
The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl is on CBS. Louisville and Washington face off for the first time ever. Tuesday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Norlander, what else do we need to know from Saturday? There was a big one inside Glorilla Forum, if you want to start there.
You got to start there, GP, because Memphis wins 87-70 over Ole Miss. You and I both had that one. Tigers are now 10-3. They've got 6 high major wins. The resume is really, really good. Ole Miss is 11-2. By the way, Ole Miss from that SEC, only 2 high major wins as it heads into 2025 there. I want you to take the floor here quickly from me on Memphis. Really good performance. Was up early. Chris Beard's team never had a shot. I thought Colby Rogers, for him to step up the way he had 28, he's a player that's on his 4 school, started Cal Poly, then Siena, than Wichita State. And now here with Memphis. The really good thing about Memphis, if you're a Tigers fan, Haggerty and Hunter are your 1 and 2 on any given night. And I think Rogers is probably the 3, but even if he's the 4, like you've got a guy who's more than a glue guy, but not a go-to guy, but 1 out of every, 4 or 5 games, maybe he can be the guy. This was the 5th time this season. He's had at least 15. He's had 5 games of at least 15 plus points. That was a really, really good performance by him. Penny Hardaway, good on you. You did what you needed to do after scheduling aggressively and ambitiously in the non-conference. You have set yourself up to be on a track to be anywhere, in my opinion, from, I think, the best case scenario for Memphis. If it absolutely rolls, I think the best case is a 3, although I don't think that's likely, but that's the best case. I think your worst case, if things get out of hand, your worst case, I think, is an 8, but I think that's very unlikely as well. So I think it's in the 4 to 7 seed range. You've done a wonderful job. Really impressive performance. No doubt about it on Saturday. Tigers looked really good.
The Rogers thing was wild. He was 10 of 16 from the field, 6 of 9 from 3, 28 points. And it comes after he was dreadful in the previous 2 games. He was 1 of 19 from the field, 0 of 12 from 3 in the previous 2 games. And then he pops off like that. And there's a lot of reasons why Memphis was able to navigate its non-league schedule that ranks top 5 nationally in terms of difficulty, according to the net. But like the biggest reason is those guards: Tyrese Hunter, PJ Haggerty, Colby Rogers. They're all shooting above 40% from 3. And there's very little in their backgrounds that suggests this was going. I don't know that I expected any of them to shoot 40% from 3.
Yeah, for sure. Well, but maybe Haggerty, but yeah.
But they're all shooting above 40% from 3, and Memphis is above 40% as a team and ranked in the top 15 nationally. Against Ole Miss, Memphis made 7 threes, only 7 in the game, but Rogers had 6 of them. The other thing with Haggerty and the other thing on offense with Memphis is, Memphis is top 10 in the country at getting to the free throw line. And a lot of that is Haggerty specifically. He averages like 9.5 free throw attempts per game and makes 83% of them. So the guards are like, those 3 guards are, I don't want to say they're as good as any guards in the country, but they're doing it. They're getting the job done. And like you said, Memphis is now 10-3 against the top 5 non-league schedule. They've got 8 wins inside the first 2 quadrants. Nobody else has more than 6. Not Auburn, not Tennessee, nobody. They've got 2 more wins inside the first 2 quadrants than anybody else. What's interesting, and I don't know that I can remember something like this, and I don't know that it's something that's very easy to look up, but Memphis has played 13 games this season so far. You might have seen me tweet this. If not,
I have not. I don't know where you're
going.
Okay,
good. Okay. How many of the 13 games that Memphis has played have they been favored to win at tip-off?
Well, this seems like a leading question here. So they've played 13. How many have they been favored of the 13? Let me cheat just a little bit, and let me just look at their schedule here. Because I'll do it in real time for you, bud. Here. This is I'm gonna have to retroactively think where they were. Missouri at home, I'm gonna say yes, that's 1. At UNLV. I'll say no. So that's 1. Home against Ohio, 2. San Francisco semi away, that would be 3. UConn is no. Michigan State is no. Auburn is no. So we're at 3 right now. Tech at home, Louisiana Tech at home is 4. Arkansas State at home is 5. Clemson on the road would be no. Virginia on the road, I will say no to Virginia on the road. I might have 5 right now. Mississippi State at home, I will say 6. And so I'll say 7 because Ole Miss, I know they were favored because we both picked them to cover the 2. So I'll say 7 out of the 13.
They've only been favored 6 times out of the 13 games.
I wonder which one I was wrong about. Maybe Mississippi State I was wrong on.
I'll just give you, they were underdogs at UNLV. They were underdogs at San Francisco, underdogs against UConn, underdogs against Michigan State, underdogs against Auburn, underdogs at Clemson, underdogs against Mississippi State. They have been underdogs 7 times based on nothing more than the betting markets. If the favorite team won every game Memphis has been in this season, Memphis right now would be 6-7. Like, this could have gone terribly.
Yep. And it's 10-3.
And Memphis is 10-3. They've already won 5 games as underdogs so far this season. And what's interesting is now, based on current projections, they won't be an underdog again. Like, it's all over.
Yeah.
They're an underdog in more than half of their games so far. And barring injuries or some weird stuff, they should not be an underdog again until at some point in the NCAA tournament. I moved them back into the top 25 on Sunday morning, all the way up to 18th. And, when you say things like Memphis has 2 more wins inside the first 2 quadrants than anybody else in the country. Memphis is 10-3 against the top 5 schedule in America. I gather some people might be, well, why were they not already in the top? Like, you ready for this? Memphis, even before the win over Ole Miss, had more wins in the first 2 quadrants than anybody else in the country.
Well,
so
they got a Q4 loss, do they not?
They got a Q3 loss.
Now, I told you it might jump. At the time, Arkansas State, I believe, was the bottom of the barrel, and that's a really, really good mid-major team. So now they've knocked it up a little bit. Okay,
you are right, but except I was wrong. I go back to that podcast, and I recognized it immediately afterward. I just had it wrong. I read a tweet somewhere and called it a quad 4 loss, but when I went and actually looked at it,
so it was Q3.
It's always been quad 3.
Okay,
but it is quad 3, and that's just, I don't think people realize how unusual it is for a good team to take a quad 3 loss. Because, like, you ready? Trivia time.
Okay.
How many teams in the AP poll right now have a quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 loss on their resume?
Look at you, just diving in on a weekend, low games. You figure, what the hell? Let me just search through the paperwork. I'll say 0. Well, hold on. Memphis not currently ranked, so I will say 0.
The answer is 0. If Memphis would have been in the AP poll this past week, Memphis would have been the only team in the AP poll with a quadrant 3 loss. The only other team in the top 50 of the net with a quadrant 3 loss is Michigan. We talked about that on the last episode. So it is very unusual for a top 25-ish team at this point in the season to have a quadrant 3 loss, and sometimes at any point in the season. Arkansas State is not bad. The best team
trendy, in my opinion, if it makes the tournament, Arkansas State will be a trendy 13 seed to beat its beat its counterpart in the fourth.
And if they do it, then Brian will be coaching in the SEC next year or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, actually, the way it's going, none of those coaches are getting fired. So
right. Yeah. The no SEC job will be open, so we have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to run him out of.
Hard to fire a coach when every single team in your league makes the tournament. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm just saying, I want to say, because it sometimes comes across the wrong way. Like, I can't believe they lost to Arkansas State. Arkansas State's not bad. It's a Sun Belt team that should win their league, top 100 in the net, but they are 98th in the net. And when you're 98th in the net, and when you are at home playing a team that's 98 in the net, I'm sorry I didn't make the rules, but that's a quadrant 3 loss, and that's wildly damaging. But at some point, I still think you've got to let the wins offset that one bad Sunday afternoon. And for me, that point came this morning. Memphis is, as of this morning, the only team in the top 25-1 with a quadrant 3 loss, but the Tigers have 2 more victories inside of the first 2 quadrants than anybody else. And I think that makes it perfectly reasonable to have them in the top 20. I give a lot of credit to Penny Hardaway. When you return only 1 scholarship player and put together a non-league schedule in possibly a make it or break it year for your career, and the betting markets say, man, you should only win 6 of these. You should only win 6 of these 13. You're setting yourself up to really, it could have been heading into a new year and we're already getting lists together about who's going to be the next Memphis coach. And instead, he and his staff, mostly a new staff that he threw together right before the season, and mostly a new team that he threw together this offseason, he challenged everybody. They have passed that test with few issues. And unless they hit too many of these landmines in the AAC, and there's a bunch of them, it's like you're going through a conference schedule and there's almost nothing that can help you and everything that can hurt you. And that's what got them last season. But they're better this season than they were last season. The league is worse this season than it was last season. I don't think this is going to be a repeat. This team's different. These players are different. Penny seems different, frankly. If you're a Memphis fan, you should be fired up right now.
We'll get to a few more results here, but I mentioned something on our joint HQ hit on Saturday before the big games, and that is coaches are always worried about the team they have the game before and the game after Christmas break, which can last anywhere from 3 days to 6 days, depending on what your program is and what your schedule is. There's no set. But the point is, when they're getting ready to leave, are their minds and bodies still with you in that last game, which can often be a bye game? And then when they come back, what kind of team are you getting there? And I bring that up to say, we're going to talk Louisville in just a second here. San Diego State loses at home. There weren't a ton of games, but there were results that don't overreact too much here because they could be aberrational. We'll see. And with Ole Miss, I don't know, 11-2 team. Maybe it was just a little sluggish coming off the Christmas break here. You got a game on the road. It's a tough assignment. But they didn't look ready to play. They were outclassed. And now I think the goal for Mississippi is to make sure you are not in the bottom 4 in the SEC here, because the resume isn't great right now. I think that team could be as good as, say, 7th in a stacked SEC, but if you told me it was 13th or 14th, I wouldn't be stunned there either because the league is so loaded. We'll wait and see on that. Let's keep it moving here. Utah State wins at San Diego State 67-66. In fact, dramatic ending here. Josh is subbing in for Nada, who is still enjoying his Christmas break. So, Josh, if you could, here we go. Let's cue up how Utah State won at Viejas on Saturday.
And they do. 10 seconds. Anderson, does he have another? And he does! He does! It's his 4th 3. And now Utah State by 1. At the horn. What a finish! What a win!
67-66. Utah State does it on the road. They're 12-1. Tucker Anderson, if you were listening or watching, was the one that hit it. Credit to FS1 for the call there. Anderson had a season-high 14 points on 407 three-point shooting. San Diego State and Dutcher, they had a timeout on that last possession, opted against using it, didn't get it done. It's the first ranked win on the road for the Aggies since 1991 when they beat then 10th-ranked Utah on December 10th of that year. Damn, I was 10 years old the last time Utah State won on the road against a ranked opponent, and it was their first win. Here's a little bit of a stunner, even though this is a tough place to win. They had not won at San Diego State since 99, and on Saturday was only the second time ever that Utah State had won at San Diego State. Adding to the surprise of all of this was, admittedly, like, I had this game on, was doing stuff around the house. It was kind of okay, Christmas come and gone. We don't have to take down all the decorations just yet, but let's clean up a little bit here and there. On that note, real quick, are you December 26th, 27th comes and we got to get rid of the Christmas stuff, or we're a New Year's Day, January 2, we clean it up? What's the Parrish household protocol situation over there?
If it were up to me,
yes,
we'd wake up on the 26th and everything would be back to normal.
But
it's not up to me.
It's not up to you. So you're still rocking where we're at. I don't mind, getting through New Year's and then we take it down. So anyway, yesterday was like, what do we want to still keep up? The kids still like to have their open presents under the tree. It's kind of a cool thing. They dip in. My boys got this like dog man memory flip game that they just absolutely love. We had some great times there. But anyway, the point is this: I was doing that as this game got out of hand. 40-22, San Diego State led in the first half, and then Utah State outscored the Techs 45-26 for the final 21 and change of the game. Aggies were down more than 90% of this game. They never led by more than one, but they got the win. Really impressive. Last note from me here. They won. Utah State just won back-to-back games at St. Mary's and San Diego State. Those have obviously been two of the best mid-majors period, but particularly on that side of the country over the past 15, 20 years. Has there been a single team? You'd have to have the benefit of getting the schedule, obviously. Has there been a single team that has had to play St. Mary's and San Diego State in back-to-back situations on the road in one period in the past 15, 20 years? I would guess the answer is no. I'd love to know. Utah State still has another road game awaiting after winning 2 in a row. They got to play Nevada on Tuesday night. But right now, we can say it, GP. Even though San Diego State is technically still ahead by, I think, 3 spots at KenPom, Utah State, one-loss team heading into 2025, that's your best team in the Mountain West.
3-0 in quarter one. It's interesting because when you are Utah State with a new coach and you start, outside of the top 70 at KenPom, you're a little bit off the radar, right? And then you just keep winning games, but like you don't beat anybody with a number next to their name, and that's usually how people notice and how it launches you onto a national radar. And they just haven't done that. And they do have the loss to UC San Diego. And it's 0 wins over top 40 KenPom teams. So again, there's nothing like this big signature, except for maybe yesterday, just because there were so few games and that was one of the compelling ones. but there's just not like this big signature, boom, they're here. This is a legit rankable basketball team. There hadn't been that moment yet, but they are 12-1 with 3 quadrant 1 wins. If I'm going to say it earlier about UCLA, it remains true with Utah State too. Only 3 teams in the country have more quadrant 1 wins right now than Utah State. Again, a lot of people have 3, but only 3 teams have 4. If not for the loss to UC San Diego, I think they'd clearly be ranked right now.
I think they'll be ranked Monday.
They could be, and I don't have them in the top 20.
GP 12-1 with those two, coming off those 2 road wins. They got to be ranked. The loss is random. I get it. 2 points at home, UC San Diego, but they also beat Iowa. Good Bonnie's team. Like this team deserves to be ranked on Monday.
Fine with me. I did not put them in the top 25-1 on Sunday morning. Like Cincinnati is like first team out for me. Utah State might at this point be second team out for me. So if I did a top 25-3, I'd have them, but I left them out for now. Still, like you can't say enough about what Jared Calhoun is doing in Logan. I mean, 12-1 with 3 quadrant 1 wins through your first 13 games after starting outside of the top 70 in some of the computers. That's good stuff. Yep. Could be a second straight Utah State coach in contention for National Coach of the Year.
Yeah, no doubt. And as we mentioned on the Friday pod, it's just, something about that place, man. They credit to Calhoun because he's getting the work done. He had to rebuild the whole thing like Sprinkle had to do a year ago and Odom before that. And, shouts to Stu Morrill, who seemed to have built this whole thing up all those years ago. But Utah State still getting it done. Credit to them. See if they can go for 3 wins in a row. It's not going to be easy. Nevada's been a little bit up and down, but that's their next road game. Another game won in the closing seconds. A close shave. Louisville beat Eastern Kentucky 78-76. They won on a layup in the final second and change there to beat a sub 500 ASUN team. Oh, by the way, Eastern Kentucky actually had the ball 76-75 with 10, 12 seconds to go. Devontae Blanton worked the post, couldn't get the shot to fall. Chucky Hepburn got a good contest on that. Then it was a scramble play. Waterman might have, listen, Louisville fans, you take it any way you can. I watched the replay of this like 5 or 6 times. I think Waterman might have double dribbled. It was weird how he accepted the pass and switched his hands. Regardless, it wasn't called. And then it was a scramble. He gets it in. There would have been an opportunity for the officials to, I think, call a whistle on 2 potential fouls against EKU. Didn't happen. Waterman gets it. Louisville wins 78-76, and it's now 8-5 overall. It has beaten UTEP and EKU by a combined 5 points at home as of late, but these are wins. They're not losses. You're at least getting some progress by getting victories there. I know Louisville wants to, and their fans want to have a little bit more momentum because I know Louisville fans were very optimistic. I wasn't on the same page as them with this. I didn't think Louisville would be a tournament team. They very much thought they would be. 8-5, some close shave wins. At least you're not 5-8. At least you're not worse. You're out of the dark days, you would think. Next up, at home against a Carolina team. That is quite the game on Wednesday. Intriguing matchup. Louisville has a really good opportunity there.
Yeah, I guess I'd say Pat's first season at Louisville isn't going as smoothly as I thought it would go. Like, I didn't think they'd beat 8-5 through 13. I thought they'd be better than that. But all 5 losses are to top 40 KenPom teams. So it's not like they, got the Q3, like the bad loss on their schedule. The thing they're really missing is like the big home win. They need one of those, and maybe that comes Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
They've had moments to maybe get them. Tennessee came in there, Duke came in there, and, they got handled pretty easily in both of those games. They need the big win in the Yum Center just to have everybody experience what Louisville basketball used to feel like. Again, perhaps that comes on New Year's Day. But 8-5 through 13, even if it's not what I expected, let's not have too short of a memory. They won 4 games 2 years ago. They won 8 last year. You've already got 8. And it's not even January 1st yet. You're in such a better place than you've been that I hope that they can appreciate that and pack it out on Wednesday and see what happens against the Tar Heels.
Incremental progress. We'll see if a wishy-washy ACC allows for some openings and avenues for Louisville to be one of the surprise teams that can pop and, maybe be top 5, top 6 in that league. I don't know if it'll happen, but obviously there's opportunity. Last game of a result of note, again, relatively slow Saturday here. New Mexico beat Colorado State. I had that one in the final 4-1. GP did not. 76-68. Lobos are now 10-3. They've got a win over UCLA that could prove pretty crucial. Remember, New Mexico last year, to my surprise and dismay, needed to win the Mountain West title game to get into the bracket. We found out after the fact that had New Mexico lost, unjustifiably, it would have been left out of the field. Now this team maybe putting together enough of a resume here. They're going to have to avoid the landmines at the bottom end of the Mountain West to have an at-large worthy resume there. I tell you what, they got 76 on Colorado State, and no one went for more than 14 points in this game. That's a good sign. Some good balance there. So now they have wins over UCLA, USC, VCU, and now a good road win against a league opponent. You'll take it every single time. And just a quick highlight on Donovan Dent. I think he's a dark horse All-American candidate. In order to be an All-American, I think New Mexico is going to have to obviously be in the NCAA tournament and be a top 2 Mountain West team. But he's averaging 19.2 points, 7.2 assists, shooting 45% from 3 right now. Quality player. He was on our top 101 list, obviously, heading into the season. He's not an unknown commodity, but I think as we start to look toward conference play and some of the dudes that aren't in high major leagues getting it done, Dent is among the best of them.
Obviously nice win. The win over UCLA, huge. That's a quad 1, but it's the only quad 1 they got. They're below 500 in the first quadrant right now. We spent 5 minutes talking about Memphis's quad 3 loss to Arkansas State. Buddy, that ain't nothing compared to New Mexico's quad 4 loss to New Mexico State.
Yep.
So
they had this last year, by the way, which almost held it because they lost the game to Air Force. So those things have been an anchor. Yeah.
This is just, it might be hard for them to get there. It might be hard for them to get to where
they're going to need to be top 2. I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to really perform well in the league. But that was a nice moment yesterday, and they've now won 3 straight since that quad 4 loss to New Mexico State.
Let's take a quick break here, and then we want to get to remembering an absolute icon, a beloved CBS colleague. Greg Gumbel sadly passed away just a couple of days ago. We're going to take some time to share some thoughts and memories and an era of remembrance of him. But first, a quick break.
Sad news from the sports world, including our CBS Sports family. Greg Gumbel, broadcasting legend, died Friday after a battle with cancer. He was 78 years old and just a giant of the industry. He initially came to CBS in 1988. He worked other places over the years, among them NBC, MSG, WFAN, ESPN. Yep. He's a former Sports Center host, which is not something that I think I recalled until I read it this weekend. Do you remember that?
I knew of it because Gumbel, really, I do think he had a one-of-a-kind career, and we saw it in the remembrances from multiple networks. Like, it's rare when a famous broadcaster passes that you have so many different broadcasting entities chipping in to pay respects to him, and that's because he was a seminal figure everywhere he went, and his presence along with Chris Berman, Bob Lee, Tom Mees, like they were central figures in building out ESPN in its fledgling days. And so I was aware of it, but got reminded all the more so in the past.
Yeah, I guess I'm sure I knew it at one point. It wasn't, if you'd have asked me a week ago, I would not have remembered that, but it was an interesting thing to read. So Greg worked a number of different places, but he is most closely connected to CBS Sports. And in his career, he really did do it all, like called Super Bowls, hosted Super Bowl coverage, anchored coverage of Major League Baseball, college football, NASCAR, the Olympics, called NBA games, MLB games, even College World Series games. Like, you name it, Greg Gumbel probably did it and likely did it better than everybody else. Just a huge figure in the industry who, for our purposes, is perhaps best known as the host of CBS Sports college basketball coverage from the late 1990s until he stepped away from his professional duties for health reasons that we now know were a cancer diagnosis. For decades, Greg Gumbel told us if our favorite college basketball teams made the NCAA tournament or not. Like, who are the 1 seeds? Who's the best 5-12 matchup?
Right now, as you say this, yes.
Like, who finished just on the wrong side of the bubble? For decades, Greg Gumbel was the man who broke that news to the world. So the industry lost an important person this weekend. Our CBS Sports family lost an incredible human. Norlander, before you and I were lucky enough to work for the same company as Greg Gumbel, we just watched him on TV and admired him from a distance like everybody else. In some ways, we did grow up with him through our televisions. That's a fair way to put it, isn't it?
It is. I want to say a couple more things, but I want to give our viewing audience, and if you're listening, obviously this is going to be on the audio feed as well. Our team at CBS Sports put together a really nice tribute to Greg and Josh. If we could, let's cue that up. This is a good 2.5 minutes looking back at the distinct, legendary career of the one and only Greg Gumbel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel. Welcome to CBS Sports.
A television staple for half a century, Greg Gumbel saw it all.
Not only the biggest story of these Winter Olympic Games, but the biggest story of any Winter Olympic Games.
After starting his career in his hometown of Chicago, he went on to work for ESPN and MSG before joining CBS Sports in the late 1980s.
Kenny, it's a brand new day. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to New Orleans. Welcome to Omaha, Nebraska, and to the championship game of the College World Series. I'm Greg Gumbel.
It was at CBS that Greg will become one of the most versatile announcers in television. Renowned for his smooth delivery and composed demeanor, he thrived as the host of the NFL Today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel. Along with Terry Bradshaw, we welcome you to the NFL Today.
As a play-by-play announcer,
Lowe is going to take his first free throw left-handed in honor of his friend, Hank Gabbard.
and as an Olympic anchor.
Nancy and Tanya, Tanya and Nancy.
After a short stint at NBC, he was back at CBS.
All of us here at CBS are pleased to welcome the National Football League back to CBS Sports.
Greg joined forces with Phil Simms to form the lead NFL announce team and made history as the first black play-by-play announcer to broadcast a major championship sporting event.
We are glad you are with us on CBS, and Super Bowl 35 is underway.
3 years later, he was on the call again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel along with Phil Simms from 41 yards. Looks good. The New England Patriots claimed their second Super Bowl championship in 3 years.
After returning to host the NFL Today,
I want to welcome you back to the seat that you once came from. Back in the 90s, you're back in the seat old school.
I appreciate that.
Greg would return to the booth to call NFL action for another 17 seasons.
Flacco stepping up and throwing deep down the far sideline. Caught! Into the end zone! Touchdown, Jacoby Jones!
For more than 25 years, he was your host for March Madness, guiding you from Selection Sunday all the way to the Final Four.
It's time for that moment that we've all been waiting for as we celebrate the culmination of another great tournament with those who have earned their one shining moment.
It's only fitting that Greg had countless shining moments of his own, a trailblazing announcer with a legendary career that will never be forgotten.
For all of us here at CBS, I'm Greg Gumbel. Thanks so very much for joining us, everyone. Good night.
A really tremendous tribute there. I hate that had to be made under these circumstances, but the people who made it really handled it beautifully. And just sad news on the weekend. Greg, I think people remember maybe, he missed the selection show last March.
Yeah.
At the time, it was described as a family illness. Adam Zucker filled in. There was always a hope that Greg would return to the CBS Broadcast Center this season. Sadly, that did not happen. Somebody who knew him better than most of us is Seth Davis. We all work with Greg, but some more than others. Like I mentioned on HQ yesterday, there's a level to CBS Sports, and Greg Gumbel's at the tip top of that. He hosts Olympics, and we do a podcast. So we were colleagues with him, but not nearly the way some others were. Specifically, Seth Davis. He had a really sweet piece on his Hoops HQ site. I know you read that and really liked it as well.
I did. I'm going to read a couple graphs from Seth because he did a wonderful job remembering. By the way, the great James Brown, one legendary broadcaster remembering another in that CBS remembrance there. That's the perfect touch. And yes, to all the people associated with making that video and remembrance about Gumbel on our team, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Here is what Seth wrote. Give me a good, minute and a half here, because he in this he gives more of, I think, Gumbel's personality and who he was than people realized. So I'm reading directly from Seth's column right here. Greg Gumbel did not care for parades. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was something about the artifice of it all, the way people got together and cheered for all those silly things that were strolling by. Mostly, I think it was an affectation, a touchstone of humor for Greg to come off as curmudgeonly when everyone knew that he was actually the sweetest man alive. Greg also didn't like golf. He tried it a couple of times, hated it, gave it up, and then spent the rest of his life mocking the game and those who enjoyed it. This was a constant source of amusement because Clark Kellogg and I love golf almost as much as we love college basketball. When we would wax poetic on the CBS set about our respective games and the courses we played, Greg would sit back in his chair and roll his eyes. He would make us chuckle with the overly grave tones he used when reading a promo for CBS's golf coverage. If a highlight came on of showing a player about to strike a putt, Greg would crack, bet it goes in. Greg had a strong aversion to eggs and a Costanza-like ability to act hilariously annoyed at small things. But he loved a lot of things too, like stand-up comedy and slapstick movies and Howard Stern. Once in a while, during a highlight, I would drop in a Baba Booey reference to see if I could throw him off on live TV. Greg and I were both fluent in trading places. There was literally no situation where some line from a movie couldn't be dropped in and send us both guffawing. He had a very high batting average when it came to forwarding jokes over email. He loved classic rock, especially the Rolling Stones. He'd text me photos from all kinds of shows he was attending during the year. And the only thing Greg loved more than laughing was making other people laugh. When you were around him, that's what you usually did. Most of all, Greg loved his family, especially his granddaughter, Riley. There was no conversation that he didn't immediately steer her way. I can scroll through years of text messages with him and watch her more from infant to young lady. Here's Riley learning to walk, Riley snuggling a puppy, Riley playing the violin, Riley singing, Riley smiling with her grandpa. She was the center of his universe. Today is an immeasurably sad day, not just for me, of course, but for the countless people who knew and worked with Greg all these years. When people die, you always hear tributes about how great they were and how much everyone liked them. But I'm telling you, in all my years in this business, I have never heard anyone say one negative thing about Greg Gumbel. As far as I could tell, his only character flaw was his disdain for Bruce Springsteen, but I loved him for that too. It's what made Greg, Greg. Seth's column continues. We know he's a listener to the pod. We appreciate you, buddy. This is a wonderful, wonderful piece. A few personal notes here. As you listened and saw in that video, Gumbel calling Hank Gathers' free throw left-handed for his late teammate. Bo Kimball doing it for Gathers, I should say. A big moment, obviously, in tournament history there. Gumbel being the voice to welcome the NFL back to CBS in late 1998, which was a massive moment for the company. It's forgotten by some, perhaps, that, he had a tremendous call of Stockton in 97 when he hit that deep three to send the Jazz. I think the exact quote was, "John Stockton sends the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals." And that would be the year that they would go on and play Jordan and the Bulls, obviously, there. Gumbel also had, whenever there would be a fumble in a game, he would rarely describe it as that. He would always just yell out or blurt out, "Lost the football." And this became such a thing that I'm the oldest of four brothers. And we grew up, obviously, playing wrestling, doing all that kind of stuff. But we would play 2-on-2 football, inside, outside, whatever. And the words in the Gumbel tone, "Lost the football," all the time. It has been one of the long-running references inside of my family forever. And Greg was just a phenomenally talented broadcaster because he could do play-by-play, transition to studio, didn't matter. Winter Olympics, NASCAR, NBA Finals, called the College World Series in baseball. Obviously, his work with Selection Sunday, and I want to get to that in just a second. But one thing that I had forgotten, GP, and the reason why I had forgotten was I don't think I ever realized it, because back when this moment happened, I was in college and I was working. I did banquet work. I worked weddings and all that kind of stuff. So when this game happened on this particular night, I did not watch it live. I was at work working some sort of January wedding. He called the tuck rule game when Adam Vinatieri hit the game winner for New England over the Raiders, and essentially that game altered the course of two franchises, the career potentially of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Like, if they don't win that game, who knows what? Maybe they win every other Super Bowl except that one, but obviously a seminal moment in the history of the NFL. It was Greg Gumbel who had that call, and not only did he have that call, Josh, let's cue this up as well. He does the classic, first of all, if you're watching on YouTube, notice how You can't even see this football as it disappears into the snow, and then he does the classic. He just lays out and lets the crowd take over. This is a quick clip, but Josh, go ahead, cue this up so we can take a trip back in time to 2002.
Get this kick up.
This will be a 45-yard attempt. That's Vinatieri's luck from this distance of late. This is the Patriots season on the line. The kick is away. It is good.
The classic announcer layout. You can't see a damn thing in that snow. That is really one of the all-time NFL games, and Greg was on the call. Last for me on Gumbel, as I'm sure many people listening and watching can identify with. He was the conductor of Selection Sunday. His voice at 6:00 Eastern on a mid-March Sunday every year was the thing that induced all of this excitement, anxiety, appreciation, happiness, goosebumps. He was note perfect every time. I could talk for 30 minutes about Greg Gumbel and how he actually broadcasted Selection Sunday every year, how he knew what to say in what intonation, how to build the suspense, but not take it too long, how to allow Clark and Seth, and in later years, obviously, you had Barkley and Kenny Smith and the rotating cast of characters that would come in and talk on Selection Sunday. He was perfect. He was and is the voice of Selection Sunday. So many people that are kind enough to engage with our show and listen to this show, you grew up on college basketball because of what Greg Gumbel embodied when it came to college basketball. He was the one that's, as you saw in the video produced by our CBS Sports team, he was the one that handed over for one shining moment to conclude CBS and Turner's coverage every single year. And it is so sad to lose him at 78, to know that we will not get another Selection Sunday, another college basketball piece of coverage with him ever again. But he was the guy. And so much of my joy in covering this sport centers around what it is in March every single year. And there is nothing in sports, while the games are all incredible and the Final Four and the first Thursday of March, those are on a tier to themselves. The selection show and the hours-long buildup on that day to getting to dinner time on that Sunday night, there is nothing like that hour where we are waiting to see who gets in, who doesn't, who's the one seeds, who are you going to play, and Gumbel's ability to say, and in the 8-9 game, or these games will be played, in Iowa City, or these games will be played in Jacksonville, or wherever it was. The way that he was able to do that came so naturally to him, but there was no one like him when it came to that stuff. And as Seth pointed out in his column, if you're especially young, you don't have any memory of this. But before the CBS Turner Sports merger, 12 or so years ago now, CBS had all the games, which meant that for about a decade before that, you could watch these games and seek them out and watch them online individually. But if you were just watching on television, you got whatever was in your region. And I know there are some sickos out there that still wish we could go back to that. I'll take having the availability to watch any game whenever I want. Thank you very much. But there was something to the idea of you get the game you get, and then if CBS is coming in and giving you a different game, a live look-in, or they'd go the original quad box, or the main game on your screen in the top right corner was another one, and whose voice would be telling you what was happening? It was Greg's. He was air traffic control for the NCAA tournament, and damn if he won't be missed. One-of-a-kind broadcaster, a distinct legacy. So very, very missed. I will be sure, absolutely, when it gets time to get to March, more appreciation and honor and respect and references to Greg Gumbel are coming on this podcast.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody to go read Seth's piece. I thought it was really good. I told Seth that over the weekend. Like I mentioned, it feels sort of silly when you say like, we lost a colleague, because like Greg Gumbel's up here somewhere, and I just don't consider myself that. In fact, somebody like a major media outlet reached out to me Friday and was like, "Hey, could you come on Zoom and talk about Greg Gumbel?" And I just said, I don't feel like that should be me. Like, you need to talk to Jim Nance. I like, this is our show, so of course we can talk about it here, but I didn't feel like I belonged in that setting. But I did work with him some and got to be around him, some. And I remember the first time, it was shortly after I was like, when I first started doing television, and I was in New York, and it's one of those deals where studio last night, catching a car back to the airport today, flying home. And you just sort of, you just stand in the lobby and you're waiting for the car to show up or whatever. And there's Greg. We were at the same hotel, and he was doing the same thing I was doing. And I'm not the type who will go introduce myself to people that I'm not, if I see you over there, I just let you be usually. I have some sort of, I'm never, it's some sort of disorder, but I never think somebody really is interested in me coming over and saying hello. So I just don't. And then once you find out, you end up being rude because you don't go say hello. So like, it's a battle with myself. But I was like, this Greg Gumbel, and technically we work for the same place. I'm going to go say hello. And I went over and, brief conversation, but he was just awesome. And whether he knew me or not, he acted like he did. And I thought that was sweet. And then there's this time where, I don't know, fast forward, and we were doing the way I remember, I can't remember the show for the life of me, but the way I think I remember.
That's a shocker.
It was, we were not in studio. We were not in the broadcast center. We were somewhere else in Manhattan, like a remote shot, and comfy chairs. And again, I don't remember exactly, but what it feels like is it was something we were taping that they would run in March, in the hour before games or something. It was like top 10 NCAA tournament moments of all time, or top 10 performances of all time, or players of something like that. And you get a host and some analysts, and you sit around in chairs and you talk about it. That's the way I remember that. And Greg was the host, and for whatever reason, I was one of the analysts. And that was I mentioned this on HQ yesterday. All the time you'll see NBA players ask other NBA players, younger NBA players. Like, it's a perfect podcast question when you got one of those guys on. So when was the welcome to the NBA moment? Like, when was the moment where you were like, oh, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm sitting here. And like, we all have those moments, not just basketball players. If you have any sort of career of note, you're going to have moments like that. And for me, one of those moments was genuinely like that day. Like, I'm a public school kid from Mississippi at the time with terrible hair, just awful.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And I had this moment where I'm like, I'm like in New York City, and Greg Gumbel's about to ask me questions on television. This is crazy. Like, what? And, and he was just, I just remember him being awesome and, treating me like I belonged, even if you don't know if you do. And even all these years later, don't know if you did. Last thing I'd want to say about this, and then we can take it where we want to take it. But it was mentioned in the piece that we played that in 2001, Greg did become the first African-American or black man to call play-by-play of a major sports championship in the United States. And that's when he called the Super Bowl between the Ravens and Giants in Tampa. What I gather, and I don't know this from firsthand knowledge, but what I'm told from Seth and other people is that Greg was never the person to celebrate this. He didn't emphasize it. He wasn't comfortable emphasizing it. Other people celebrate it, and it deserved to be celebrated, but it mattered less to Greg, is my understanding. But that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I thought ESPN's John Schriffen had a nice story that touched on this yesterday during the Memphis Ole Miss game. John used to work with us at CBS, and he noted that, and there's a nice little story I'll tag at the end. But he said, John said, Greg Gumbel it was hard for me to envision becoming what I've become because there weren't people that looked like me doing it. And for me, this is John talking, Greg Gumbel was that guy. Like, I was able to look at Greg Gumbel and go, okay, look at that. That's, for people who look like you and I, Norlander, it ain't hard to find people who look like us who are doing the things we aspire to do. Been that way for decades. But for different communities, it can be much more challenging. And I respect Greg for downplaying if he felt that way about it. But I don't think you can overstate the importance of that. We see it in other aspects. Barack Obama becoming president of the United States gives people something to, that person looks like me. Maybe I could someday be that too. Chadwick Boseman becoming a superhero in a major motion picture. Like, these things do matter. It makes it much more realistic to dream of something when you've actually seen somebody who looks like you do the thing you're dreaming of doing. And John Trippin made a point to say that's who Greg Gumbel was for me. And then he also said, and I thought this was awesome, when he got his first assignment, we all remember the first time we got asked to do anything. And John got, you get the email or the phone call, and it's like, hey, you're on the NCAA tournament. You're working the NCAA tournament. Wow. And phone rings one day. It's an unknown number. He doesn't have the number plugged in. Phone ring. Hello? Guess who it was? Greg Gumbel. Calling John Trippin just to say congratulations. Proud of you. And, I don't think that was an accident or coincidental. I think what John saw in Greg probably also on some level understood that people do see that in me. And this phone call could really mean something. This phone call could really matter. And you hear John tell that story yesterday, and it clearly did. And I wasn't watching Memphis Ole Miss to hear about Greg Gumbel, but I was really glad they allowed John to take time to tell that story.
That's good stuff right there. Greg Gumbel, the one and only, as Jim Nantz put it so accurately in just 5 words. Greg Gumbel was broadcasting royalty. Going to be missed, no doubt about it. Let's quickly look ahead to the next couple of let me go non-Greg Gumbel and just stumble right through this segue here right now. As we usually do on Sundays, let's quickly look ahead to the next couple of days. I think the plan here is for us to pod again at some point on New Year's Day. That is a Wednesday. And
by the way, just we can talk about it. We could be transparent.
Okay.
I got a 10 a.m. call time on Wednesday morning.
I completely forgot. Okay.
So if we're going Wednesday morning, we got to go early, baby.
Oh, well, I'm telling you what, no chance for going early on New Year's Day. All right. As usual,
we'll figure it out.
Who knows when you're getting the next show?
All right.
It could be Tuesday night. Frankly, it could be Tuesday. Oh, it's New Year's Eve.
I'm not
I don't even
New
know
Year's
what
Eve
I'm doing on New Year's Eve. I'm a father of 2. I don't know if we're going anywhere. I don't think we're going anywhere.
I don't know what I'm doing. I will be in New York City on New Year's Eve. That's some people's dreams. More like my not dream. I've done it before. It's not as great as it sounds. And so I don't know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm not doing on New Year's Eve, and that's talking to you.
Fair enough. I say you get on down there to Times Square. I want to see you. I want to see you in the throng somewhere down there.
I really might go, but not to participate. You know why?
Why?
To see our billboard.
Is it up yet?
Yes. I had a friend who was in Times Square like 3 days ago. Sent me a picture of it.
Oh, I have not seen this.
We're on a billboard in Times Square, right?
Are we really?
Yes.
No one has sent me this. I didn't realize this had actually happened already. So there is a billboard promoting the podcast that's apparently in Times Square. Send it over to me. Send it to me before the show is done. Send it to me right now if you got it.
Actually, a friend sent it to my wife. It's in my wife's car. It's in my wife's phone. So
not even you?
No. Yeah, my friends text my wife. They don't text me. They leave me alone.
That seems to track. Okay. That being said, here's the games for the next 2 days of note. We pick up a little bit, but there's not a huge stuff. But Monday, 10-1 Columbia is at 7-5 Rutgers on BTN at 5 Eastern. Rutgers, don't lose it. It is 10-1 Columbia. Keep an eye out. 7 Eastern. CBS Sports Network's got a couple of games on Monday. Yeah. Cincinnati at K. We got some Big 12 stuff on the network, which is awesome.
Love it
this season. Cincinnati at K-State. Plenty compelling game there. That is super urgent for K-State. Cincinnati knocking on the door of being a ranked program there. That's a 7 Eastern tip on CBS Sports Network. At 8 Eastern, Houston plays at Oklahoma State on ESPN+. Just keep an eye. Oh, no, we'll see. Oklahoma State hasn't been, I'll say this, has not been a disappointment immediately off the bat under Steve Lutz, so we'll see what happens there. And then 9 Eastern, Iowa State at Colorado on CBS Sports Network. That is the second time these teams have played this season. I saw them play in person in a non-con game back in Maui. Then on New Year's Eve, we've got VCU at St. Bonaventure, 2 Eastern on ESPN+. That is a tremendous A-10 game, and I suppose A-10 schedule makers couldn't have necessarily anticipated this. I wish this game was actually somewhere in the middle of January so it could have a little more of a spotlight on it. But regardless, a nice little New Year's Eve treat there. 2 Eastern on Tuesday, VCU at the Bonnies, 2 teams that could well be good enough to make the tournament. And then 4 Eastern, St. John's at Creighton on Peacock. 4 Eastern, Arizona State at BYU. Not yet sure if either of those teams are going to be tournament quality or not, but that's actually a pretty good game. Those teams collectively have a better record than most would have expected heading into 25. And then 6 Eastern, New Year's Eve, find the time, Marquette at Providence, FS1. So those are your most notable games over the next couple of days. Don't know when GP and I are going to podcast it again, but we'll get it to you eventually at some point when the time is appropriate. But I'm thinking it'll have to be at some point New Year's Day or Thursday at the latest. We'll figure it out, schedule dependent. I did forget prior to us booting up the pod machine here. I did forget that you told me this in New York before you ghosted me at the Garden.
Sorry.
You did tell me that you were going to be in studio on New Year's Day, so I'd forgotten that.
Maybe you're starting to realize why my friends they text my wife instead of me.
I think that's what I need to start doing.
By the way, I think you omitted my favorite game of the next 2 days.
Is it Brown at Kentucky?
Well, Brown at Kentucky is on my list of games to keep an eye on because I have I publicly committed to wearing a bear head on the next pod.
It wasn't just that; it was also a Brown T-shirt. We both have to if they win. That has to happen.
Okay, so I'm not traveling to New York with a bear head. All right, I'm just not gonna.
You don't have to do it the immediately next show. You're good. Okay.
Okay. So
and honestly, I think Mike Martin, Brown coach, might constitute, although I'd love this not to be the case, he might constitute 33% of our entire listenership affiliated with Brown University. So I think we're okay.
Okay, good. Because I'm just not gonna. I got a lot of stuff to travel with. I'm not taking a bear head in my in my luggage. All right, but no, that's not it. Oakland at Arkansas.
Oh, I forgot that this one was going down. That's right.
Is John Calipari insane? This is crazy. You're inviting Greg Campy down to Walton after what happened last March?
That's awesome.
The NCAA should give Jack Golke a 1-game waiver.
Oh,
dude, what would be better than Jack Golke coming back for 1 game? It's Golke against Calipari one more time.
It's incredible. That's 8 Eastern, ESPN2, Monday night, Oakland at Arkansas, by the way.
I mean, he cannot lose.
You can't lose this game.
You cannot lose that game.
Can't lose this game. Oakland's also not good this season. Oakland 4-9 went 1-2 out in at the Diamond Head. Yeah, 4-9.
I actually love that John's doing this. Like, you know what? Like, whatever. Greg's my friend. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But it is like
it also has like a tinge of I'm not going to project this entirely on Cal. I'm just saying, like, as a removed party, it also has a tinge of I need to get the last word here. I got to get the last word. No. It's not. We're not ending like that.
It's one of those. It's a little bit like what was the game we were talking about a few weeks ago where Alabama went to North Dakota. Yeah, and I was like, it's a good idea right up until you find yourself in a fight. And same thing here. Hey, let's bring Greg Campy and we can revisit all that stuff. And it's a great idea up until you find yourself. There's 13 minutes left and you're in a game. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I couldn't. Like, I actually chuckled when I saw that was on the schedule. Hilarious.
That's good stuff. That's a cheeky little matchup there. All right. Well, hey, listen. Travel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Have a happy New Year. Well, have a happy New Year.
Traveling safe is a lot tougher than it used to be.
Woo! Happy note. Yes. Okay. Everyone, please stay safe. We appreciate your listenership in 2024. Look forward to continued growth in 2025. If any of you happen to be around Greater New York City and see the billboard, feel free to post it, tweet it at me or GP or the podcast on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, wherever it is. I've yet to see this thing be sent to me, so I'd love to see it at some point here. But thank you so much, and we'll pod again soon. See you next year. Ha ha ha. We'll do it at some point Wednesday, Thursday at the absolute latest, depending on GP's schedule.
I have spent much of my adult life believing that commercial airlines were the safest thing you could do. And now, buddy, I'm scared to even get on the internet. Woo! Shouts to Davin Dowdy. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend Huck Larnell. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again at some point in 2025. Till then, take care.